Welcome back to WP Creators Corner, your go-to podcast for all things WordPress. I'm your host, Patrick Lumumba, and today we are going to look into a topic that's been buzzing in the WordPress community, that is the plugins. Specifically, we are asking the age-old question, how many WordPress plugins are too many? Now, I know what you're thinking. Patrick, come on, there is no such thing as too many plugins. Well, my friends, buckle up because we are about to embark on a wild ride through the plugin jungle. Alright, let's start with the basics. Plugins are like the Swiss Army knives of WordPress. They are incredibly useful tools that can add all sorts of features and functionality to your website without you having to write a single line of code. And let me tell you, with over 58,000 free plugins available, WordPress is like a candy store for web developers. But here's the thing, just because you can have 58,000 pieces of candy doesn't mean you should eat them all at once. Trust me, I've tried and it didn't end well. So, why do WordPress websites need plugins in the first place? Well, there are a few key reasons. First off, security. Just like how your computer needs antivirus software, your WordPress website needs protection too. Security plugins can help keep the bad guys out and your data safe. They can scan for malware, block suspicious users, and even help prevent those pesky brute force attacks. It's like having a bouncer for your website, but instead of checking IDs, it's checking for malicious code. Next up, functionality. Plugins can help optimize your site's performance, clear caches, and reduce those irritating HTTP requests. Think of it like tuning up your car. Sure, it might run without a tune-up, but with one, it will run like a kitten. Plugin can also improve usability. You want a contact form? There is a plugin for that. Need a booking system? Yep, there is a plugin for that too. Plugins can turn your basic WordPress website into a fully functional powerhouse. It's like transforming your bicycle into a motorcycle with just a few clicks. And let's not forget about marketing. From SEO to social media sharing, plugins can give your digital marketing strategy a serious boost. They can help you optimize your content for search engines, make it easy for visitors to share your post on social media, and even integrate with tools like Google Analytics to help you track your site's performance. It's like having a whole marketing team in your back pocket. Now here is where things get tricky. How many plugins should you actually use? Well, it's not as simple as picking a number out of a hat. It depends on a bunch of factors like the type of website you're running, your hosting provider's server performance, and the size of your website. But here is the kicker. It's not really about the number of plugins. It's about the quality. One bad plugin can do more damage than a dozen good ones. It's like that one rotten apple that spoils the whole barrel. So what happens when you have too many plugins? Well, let me paint your picture. Imagine you are at an all-you-can-eat buffet. You pile your plate high with everything in sight. Sounds great, right? But then you try to eat it all, and suddenly you're feeling sluggish, bloated, and maybe a little queasy. That's what can happen to your website with too many plugins. You might experience 1. Poor speed and performance. Nobody likes a slow website. In fact, if your website takes more than 3 seconds to load, about 40% of visitors will bounce faster than a kangaroo on a trampoline. And it's not just about user experience. Google takes site speed into account when ranking pages. So, a slow site could mean you are sliding down those search engine result pages very, very, very fast. Number 2 is the compatibility issues. Not all plugins play nice with each other. It's like trying to get cats and dogs to share a bed. Sometimes you'll install a new plugin and suddenly find that another one you've been using for ages starts acting up. It's enough to make you pull your hair out. Number 3, errors and crashes. Nothing says professional like a website that keeps throwing up error messages, right? Too many plugins can lead to all sorts of fun errors like the dreaded 500 internal server error or the white screen of death. Number 4, security vulnerabilities. More plugins mean more potential entry points for the bad guys. It's like adding more doors to your house. It might be convenient, but it also gives burglars more ways to get in. Now, let's look at why these issues occur. When you install a plugin, you are essentially adding more code to your website. This code needs to be processed every time someone visits your website. The more plugins you have, the more code to be processed and more resources your site needs to run smoothly. Think of it like adding weight to a car. A few passengers, no problem. But keep adding people and eventually that car is going to start struggling to move. It will use more fuel, it will be slower, and if you're not careful, something might break. But it's not just about the number of plugins. The quality of the plugins matters too. A well-coded plugin that's regularly updated and maintained is like a finely tuned engine part. It will do its job efficiently without causing problems. But a poorly coded plugin, that's like putting sand in your fuel tank. It might work for a while, but eventually it's going to cause some serious issues. So, how do we avoid turning our WordPress websites into a plugin buffet disaster? Here are some best practices. First, check the plugin's reputation. Look at things like when it was last updated, how many active installations it has, and what kind of reviews it's getting. If a plugin hasn't been updated since the days of, dial-up internet, maybe give it a pass. You want plugins that are actively maintained and supported. Look for plugins with a larger number of active installations, say 100,000. This usually indicates that the plugin is reliable and well-maintained. But don't just trust the numbers. Read the reviews too. Look for patterns in what the users are saying. If you see a lot of recent complaints about compatibility issues or security problems, that's definitely a red flag. Next, only install the necessary plugins. Do you really need a plugin that turns all your text into, Comic Sans? Actually, don't answer that. The point is, every plugin should serve a specific, important purpose on your site. If you can't really articulate why you need a plugin, you probably don't need it. And then, test before you install. WordPress 6.6 now allows for testing a plugin before you can install it. This is when you are installing a plugin from within the plugins page in the admin dashboard. Also, in case where the plugin owners have not included the live preview button, you can download the plugin and test it on WordPress Playground or a development site. When you're testing a plugin, pay attention to how it affects your website's performance. Does it slow things down? Does it clash with any of your existing plugins? These are important things to know before you commit to using a plugin on your live site. Another thing, prioritize multifunctional plugins. Why have 10 plugins when one can do the job? It's like having a Swiss Army knife instead of a whole toolbox. Look for plugins that offer multiple features that you need. For example, instead of having separate plugins for contact forms, email marketing, and CRM, you might be able to find one plugin that does all the three things. Now, let's talk about how to prevent the plugin issues. The first thing, use reliable hosting. Your web host is like the foundation of your house. If it's not solid, everything else is going to be shaky. A good host will have servers optimized for WordPress. A good host will have or will provide regular backups and solid security measures in place. They'll also have good customer support for when things go wrong, because let's face it, in the world of websites, things always go wrong eventually. When choosing a host, look for things like 1. Regular updates to their server software and hardware. 2. Great security features like automatic backups and transparent server security fixes. 3. 24-hour support, because website issues don't always happen during business hours. 4. High website uptime. Aim for 99% or more. Hosting plans that are compatible with your technical knowledge and site needs. That's also another important thing to consider when you're choosing a web host. And finally, good value for money. Consider factors like the free SSL certificates, email accounts and bandwidth, and even the domain names, if they provide free domain names. Another thing is you need to optimize your database regularly. Think of it like cleaning out your closet. Get rid of stuff you don't need anymore. Over time, your WordPress database can accumulate a lot of unnecessary data. Things like post revisions, spam comments, and data from plugins you've deleted. This bloat can slow down your website. Here are some steps you can take to optimize your database. Step 1, delete deactivated plugins. You don't need them. Delete them. 2, remove leftover data from deleted plugins and posts. 3, delete spam comments. 4, remove unused tags and outdated posts. 5, consider installing a reliable database optimization plugin that does the regular cleanups of bloated data. You can look for plugins like maybe WP Rocket, for example. But remember, before you start messing with the database, make sure you have a recent backup. It's like having a safety net when you're walking a tightrope. Another thing that you also need to do is to perform backups. Always have a backup. It's like having a spare tire for your website. If something goes wrong, whether it's a plugin conflict, a hacking attempt, or just a mistake on your part, a backup can save you. Many hosting providers offer automatic backups, but it's also a good idea to have your own offsite backup system in place, just in case. Another thing, remove inactive plugins. If you're not using it, lose it. It's taking up space and potentially causing issues. Even deactivated plugins can sometimes cause problems. So if you're sure you don't need a plugin anymore, just delete it completely. Also, update regularly. Keep your plugins up to date. It's like getting your car serviced. It keeps everything running smoothly. Plugin developers often release updates to fix bugs, patch security vulnerabilities, and add new features. By keeping your plugins updated, you are ensuring that your site is as secure and efficient as possible. Here is a pro tip. Before you update any plugins, make sure to back up your site first. Sometimes updates can cause conflicts and you want to be able to roll back if needed. It's like having a save point in a video game. If things go wrong, you can always go back to where you were before. Now let's talk about some specific types of plugins that most WordPress sites can benefit from. Number 1, security plugins. These are like the bodyguards of your website. They can help prevent hacking attempts, scan for malware, and even help you recover if your site does get hacked. Number 2, SEO plugins. These help optimize your content for search engines. They can guide you in writing meta descriptions, optimize your content structure, and even suggest improvements to your writing. Number 3 are the caching plugins. These can significantly speed up your site by storing static versions of your pages. It's like having a photocopier for your website. Instead of creating each page from scratch every time someone visits it, it can serve up a pre-made copy. Next are the backup plugins. As we discussed earlier, backups are very much important. A good backup plugin can automatically create a regular backup of your site and store them securely offsite. We also have the form plugins. These allow you to easily create contact forms, surveys, and other types of forms on your site. They are great for lead generation and customer interaction. There are also the image optimization plugins. These can automatically compress and optimize your images, which can significantly improve your site's load time. Remember that while these types of plugins can be very useful, you don't necessarily need all of them. Choose the ones that align with your specific needs and goals. Now, I know we've covered a lot here, but remember, the key takeaway is this. When it comes to WordPress plugins, quality trumps quantity every time. It's not about how many plugins you have. It's about having the right plugins for your needs. It's also important to regularly audit your plugins. Set aside some time every few months to go through your plugins and ask yourself these questions. Am I still using this plugin? Is this plugin still the best solution for my needs? Are there new plugins that might do better job? Are all my plugins up to date and compatible with my current WordPress version? This kind of regular maintenance can help keep your site running smoothly and prevent issues before they start. And hey, if you are ever in doubt about whether you need a plugin, ask yourself, can I achieve this functionality without a plugin? Sometimes a bit of custom code or a feature built into your theme can do the job just as well without the overhead of an additional plugin. Now let's address a question I get a lot. The question is, how do I know if a plugin is slowing down my site? Well, there are a few ways to check. 1, use a speed testing tool like GTmetrix or Google PageSpeed Insights to check your site's performance before and after installing a new plugin. Install a plugin like Query Monitor that can show you which plugins are using the most resources. Also, deactivate plugins one by one and test your site speed after each deactivation. This can help you identify which plugins are the biggest resource hogs. Remember, a slight decrease in speed might be worth it if the plugin adds important functionality to your site. It's all about finding the right balance. Before we wrap up, let's talk about some common plugin myths. Myth number 1. Free plugins are always worse than premium plugins. Not true. There are plenty of excellent free plugins out there. The key is to evaluate which plugin on its own merits, regardless of whether it's free or paid. The second myth is that more plugins always mean a slower site. While it's true that having too many plugins can slow down your site, a few well-coded plugins won't necessarily cause performance issues. It's more about the quality of the plugins than the quantity. Myth number 3. Once I install a plugin, I don't need to think about it again. That's very false. Plugins need regular updates and maintenance, just like any other part of your website. The fourth myth is that I need a plugin for everything, and not necessarily. Sometimes a bit of custom code or a feature built into your theme can do the job just as well. And hey, if you're ever in doubt, just remember the golden rule of plugins. If ain't broke, don't plug in it. To sum up, here are some key points to remember. Quality over quantity. Choose your plugins wisely. Regularly audit and update your plugins. Always back up before making changes. Use reliable hosting. Optimize your database regularly. Test new plugins before installing them on your live site. And don't be afraid to remove plugins you're not using. Remember, your WordPress website is like a finely tuned machine. Each plugin is a new part you're adding to that machine. Choose parts that enhance its performance, not ones that weigh it down. That's all for this episode of WP Creators Corner. If you found this helpful, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. And remember, in the world of WordPress, you're only as good as your last plugin. Do you have any questions about managing plugins? Any plugin horror stories you'd like to share, or maybe you found a plugin that's changed your WordPress life? I'd love to hear from you. Drop me a comment or reach out on social media. Until next time, this is Patrick Lumumba signing off. Keep creating, and may your websites always load in under 3 seconds. Bye bye.